The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, just a question for you. At what stage does COVID walk out the room when it says, "Look, I've done what I need to do today. I'm just going to sort of sidle out here. Is that okay? I'll see you later on." Because I'm having some really, I don't want to sound flippant, obviously, because this is it's still a serious disease, clearly. But I've been going to weddings where people have gradually now, Kev, they've been unmasking. There's the one I went to the other day, no mask at all, apart from one person who was the I will let you have a word in Edgeways in a minute. Who was the makeup artist, who started the day wearing it, and then she just put it under her chin when the last bit of lipstick was done, as if to say, well, I've done my lippy now. I suppose COVID's walked off.
Yeah, it is a tough one, isn't it? It's, I don't know. Well, I've only done 2 weddings, and the first one was in a hotel, and it was very well organised. Everybody was wearing masks, apart from when they were sat down, etc., etc. And the second one was actually all outdoors, so that was fine. They weren't wearing masks. And I didn't wear a mask for that second one.
Still airborne, though, Kev. Still airborne.
Yeah, it is still airborne. But, you know, the outside stuff, I'm not concerned so much about that. But then, like when was it? Last weekend. It was when the world opened up. It was the first Saturday, wasn't it, after the restrictions were down?
Yeah.
And all of the pubs and clubs and everything, thousands of people, So, yeah, honestly, I'm just sick to death of it. It can do one now, I have to say, but we do need to still be careful.
I think we've all said it can do one, Kev. I don't think it's listening to us, though.
The FujiCast.
At all. But I just wonder, that masking thing is a serious question, though, Kev.
It is. Yeah. No, absolutely. And people need to feel comfortable. And, I know, we both know photographers who have been, pinged and have had to go into isolation, and they're going to lose weddings and all that kind of stuff. It's just a mess.
Dodging bullets.
Yeah, dodging bullets.
Yeah,
fat bullets.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it, Kev. I hate it. Can we have our old life back? I like the old life. I know we used to bitch and moan about it now and then. It's a horrible word, sorry, but I did like it. I really did.
I know, but although I am back working, I'm kind of missing sitting at home doing nothing.
In your underwear. Right, welcome to the FujiCast. You and your questions from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the FujiCast private Facebook group that you're welcome to become a part of. If you'd like to send a mail, send it to click@fujicast.co.uk. If you don't shoot Fujifilm, what on earth is the matter with you? No, don't worry. It's a big community, and whatever flavour you shoot, you are very welcome. Kev's Book of the Week this week, what do we have?
Oh, it's a big one. It's absolutely...
You say this every week. It's
massive.
It's going to be a small ladybird book, isn't it?
It's not, honestly. It's enormous. It's Elliott Erwitt's Kolor.
Elliott Erwitt, sorry,
Kolor.
Kolor. Oh.
The book is called Kolor, with a K.
With a K?
Yeah.
That's a bit like those fancy hairdressers, isn't it? Cuts with a K and a Z. And a Z just to
I think it's something to do with Kodachrome. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah.
And today we hear... Oh, is that your foot?
I just put it back down.
All right. And today we hear from Adrian Arbib, who is a documentary photographer, don't you know? Right, where do we start with questions, Kev? Is it you or me? I must say, we are... summer holidays are always like this. It's almost like people say, well, I can't be writing in now. I'm too busy. I'll listen, but I won't write. We do need, as always, questions, thoughts, things that you're doing, stuff to keep. It's the lifeblood of the show. I'm going to have to roll that phrase out, Kev. It's the lifeblood of the show.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, don't forget, you can. There's basically 3 ways you can get questions to us. You can send an email to click@fujicast.co.uk. You can post it on the Facebook group. Not all of you are members of Facebook, of course, but there is a dedicated thread on there for questions for the show, which we work through. And if you want to get your questions ahead of the line in front of everybody else, you can send them in via Patreon. So if you are a patron, and thank you very much to all of those that are, and you send a question via the Patreon page, they are guaranteed to be featured in the very next show. There we go.
Or you could do what James Sauls did and just send beer.
You could do what James Sauls did and send beer.
With a question.
Yeah.
With a list of questions.
Yes. Yeah. Sending beer is going to get you. Yeah, that will even beat the patrons.
That's the language we know.
Yeah.
Right. Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
One from Peter Foot. Now, we're not sure that we might have dealt with this one because it's been hanging around in the inbox for quite a while. But it might be because it was quite political that I thought, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Or maybe we'll get to that next week. But I'm going to try and précis it just a little bit. It was a question about, is the show sponsored by Fujifilm? If it isn't, Peter's recommendation this is, it would be to change the name, which I'm sure would open it up to a much wider audience, significantly increase your income with a Patreon, and here I confess self-interest, he says, ensure the show remains viable. Did you use the word viable?
You saw that? Are you sure it's not Rishi Sunak writing?
Yeah, I think Rishi sent this for many years to come. Peter, a.k.a. Rishi.
Funny enough, did you see, I put on Facebook yesterday the list of the 4 most furloughed industries. I'm just going to get it back up now. Hold on a second.
Were we in there? Probably not.
We are. It made me laugh. Hang on. Right.
The wedding industry as a whole could be in there, I suppose.
No. It was... Facebook. Where is my post? Right. So this is on the news yesterday. Top 5 industry groups with the highest rates of jobs being put on furlough.
Yeah.
Have a guess. What do you think number 1 is?
Oh, I don't know. It must be something to do with the entertainment and industry, surely. Or
air passenger transport. 57% of furloughed is air passengers. Or not air passengers, but people who work in the air industry.
Well, we have is it a guy locally here? There's certainly somebody that he's had his stall here. The pizza pilot guy who was flying international long haul stuff. Who said, that's it, I'm not working. He set up a pizza van, called himself Pizza Pilot, with one of those pizza ovens that cooks it in like under a minute, one of those sort of 1500 degree things. He probably put one of his afterburners from an Airbus on it. and that's what he's been doing. So, yeah.
The second one, also 57%, is hotels.
That doesn't surprise me.
All right, so 57% of all hotel staff have been furloughed.
Wow.
57% of all air passenger transport staff have been furloughed.
Yeah.
Third is, with 51% of all staff furloughed, is travel agency and tour operators.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Joint 4th and 5th, both with 43% of all people being furloughed, is photographic industries and pubs.
And pubs.
So 43% of photographic industry staff have been furloughed, along with 43% of pub staff. What makes me laugh, makes me chuckle like a fanatic, is that, Rishi...
Oh, yes. What did he say, Kev?
Your industry is unviable.
Yes, he did, yeah.
And I'm very happy with the fact that 43% of the industry have put their hands out and taken money off him.
Yeah. It doesn't make me feel any happier.
No, of course it doesn't. But, actually, in saying all of that, in fairness to the government, they have helped massively, it has to be said. Not to everybody, of course.
No.
But, there are countries around the world where the government have not helped at all. No. And, you just be in a whole world of pain then. So, we have to be thankful of something. I think well, we're not going to get political, but I think they've managed the whole fiasco very terribly. But other than that, they've given money away, which is pretty good going.
But they didn't give money to me, Kev. I had to loan it from them.
Well, yeah, same. But, 43% is good.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, and it has been said that the furlough system is one of the leading furlough systems in the world. Not that makes me feel any better about this whole travesty of a period.
My bounce back loan's well and truly going out now every month.
Yeah, mine is.
Off it goes. Yeah. Anyway, going back to Peter's question.
Yeah, sorry, Peter. Returning back to the I can't remember how we got onto the. Oh, because we thought it came from Rishi. Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've talked about this before, haven't we, Kevin? We sort of wrestled with in the early days calling it something like mirrorless. That was a bit of a bleh kind of title, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about it several times, and the fact that, well, let's answer the question first. No, we are not sponsored by Fujifilm.
Nope.
However, they are very, very good to us.
Yes.
So they will help us when we have our little events and potentially, hopefully, big events in the future. Yeah. And they will come on the podcast. We've had Carl do that amazing video series. We've had Andreas on several times. He's going to be coming on again towards the end of August, I think.
I think it's his 4th appearance, Andreas, and it's always It's always good value, that show, the Askandreas one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's because they always get shares on Fuji Rumors. So our numbers go through the roof there, which is great.
Yeah.
So no, we're not sponsored by them. They don't kind of give us money or anything, but they are very helpful to us. And the brutal fact is, if we were, we like to say that we are brand agnostic in that anybody can listen, and yes, most of the tech questions are Fujifilm related, but the rest of it isn't. It is, it's industry specific.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if we were called mirrorless or something like that, and somebody sent in a question saying, "How do you do back button focus on my Sony AR64?"
We wouldn't know.
Something.
We wouldn't know.
Wouldn't have a clue.
No.
Yeah, would not have a Scooby Dooby Doo. And then where are you?
Where am I?
Scooby Doo. Yeah, so that's my thought on it, really.
Well, it's
I feel like we've got a niche.
Yeah,
or niche.
It's a niche, yeah, a niche. It's always made sense because of your involvement with Fujifilm. So that was, I suppose, that was one of the original sort of deciding factors of it. I mean, the fact that we get on as mates and produce a podcast, we could have done one about weddings, but I think something that had wider appeal, generally talking about photography, and was always more interesting, wasn't it? And I know we've sometimes been accused of talking about weddings far too much, but that's because of what we do.
Especially the interviews. The guests are very rarely wedding specific these days. But yeah, so that's really the answer to it. I think
it just feels right.
If it was wider reaching, we probably would get more out of it, but I don't think it would be quite as good.
I think we've both decided it's good the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. That's answered that one. That's kicked the can down the road for another 12 months on the question of why do we call it the FujiCast? That question will return very soon.
Yeah.
But Peter, don't worry. It's not going anywhere at the moment. Why did you go quiet?
Sorry, I muted my mic because I was sneezing.
Oh, I see. All right. I thought,
That's what I do now. I mute the mic instead of just sneeze all over you and expect you to edit it out.
Or go and take a test. Kev sneezed over me. It might be down a line from Bunker Malmesbury, but you never know. It's clever these days. It can go through the wire. Go on, your question.
Right, as I always do, I will start with the latest addition to the questions on the Facebook group, and this was posted 4 hours ago as of recording by John Wayne. No, I'm not saying
the
that.
John Wayne, no, I know, yeah.
Get off your horse, drink your milk.
John, I'm so sorry for him doing that, but there must have been times at school where you thought, oh, why was I called the same name as one of the most famous actors in the world?
I went to school with a guy called Mark Spencer. A lovely bloke, actually. Yeah. Really good footballer. Anyway, John says, do you think new Fuji users make it more difficult for themselves when they retain their old Nikon, Canon, Sony, etc., and carry on using both systems? Yeah. I currently have 2 pals having issues like this, but maybe they cling on to their former brand as a comfort blanket. What do you think?
Well, I did for quite a long while, Kev, actually use Canon. So this is going back to my sort of original changeover period, if you like, where I used Canon and Fuji. And then I just used Fuji film, and then I'm sort of using both again. I mean, I think they can coexist, Kev. That's a bit like a pilot who's rated on several different types of aircraft, who's more than capable to use both. I don't know if they have to be. I don't know if you have to be entirely exclusive just because you like to use a camera system.
I suppose it's more about using them at the same time. So that pilot isn't going to be flying 2 planes at the same time, is he?
No. Well, I wouldn't know. No, on that note, no. I never have and never would go out with 2 different bits of kit. Having said that, I'm going to contradict myself a bit here. That I do love taking the X100V with me, and I will use that in the evening just to change it up a bit and move amongst the wedding guests with an entirely different camera. So I've just contradicted myself there, but no, on the whole, no, I would keep them separate, and I'd use one thing for one job and one thing for another job, and I feel quite comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's horses for courses, isn't it? For people, I haven't used mixed systems. I did it right at the very beginning, I don't know, 2012, whatever it was. I don't recall it being particularly difficult, but I couldn't do it now. There's no way I could use a DSLR especially. Probably I'd be all right with another mirrorless camera, probably, if I learned how to use it. But I certainly don't think I could do mirrorless and DSLR.
No.
I'm too used to, seeing the exposures and all of that kind of stuff now and metering. And I would find it difficult. Whether it's a comfort blanket for people or not, who knows? Maybe, some people might just like using both and they have a different requirement for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not for me, really.
Think of it like golf, really. Am I going to use that iron or that iron? Sometimes you use the bit of kit that suits you for the job at the time.
Golf. I'd rather watch a freezer defrost. Bloody hell.
We've never played golf together, have we, Kev?
Oh, my God. It's not really a sport, is it, golf?
Well, I've got my dad's, my late dad's clubs. They've never really got an awful lot of use. And I know he dearly would have loved to have played golf with his son, but I just haven't. I've never really taken it up. These people that say, we'll spend a couple of hours playing golf each week. I'm with you. I've just not been bitten by it, Kev. Really, I just.
We're gonna get into so much.
We are with golf. I know,
especially from Steve Vaughan.
Yeah, Steve Vaughan's a golfer, isn't he? He likes to go off and do the golf.
My mate Postman Matt, he's a big golfer.
Yeah,
of course, he's a postman. He postmans in the morning and he plays golf in the afternoon.
Fantastic, wonderful. I know, and footballers tend to spend all their spare time, don't they, playing golf with each other?
Yeah, and MPs.
Yeah.
Politicians. That's what
true.
they do.
Being careful here not to go. Is golf an Olympic sport, by the way?
I think it is this year, isn't it?
I noticed, like last night,
it got put in there. Yeah,
we won. Didn't we win a gold or silver for BMX racing? And I was thinking,
oh no, that's a sport.
No, BMX. It's not. It's a pastime, Kev.
No, they sweat. If you sweat, it's a sport.
Is it? Well, the blokes that play darts sweat, and they only walk up to the hockey every so often, don't they?
There's a different reason for them sweating.
Anything you can play in a pub should not be classed as a sport.
You are BMX in a pub.
Well, there we go. Maybe BMX is a sport though, but darts not a sport, really. Come on, snooker not a sport. Sorry.
Darts isn't in the Olympics, and neither is snooker though.
Anything you can play with a glass of beer in one hand. I'm sorry, that's not classed as a sport. We'll get in trouble for that one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Olympics, they've done brilliantly though so far.
I haven't watched any of it, Kev, because it's just the time difference is really awkward on this one.
Oh, I haven't watched any of it. I've been looking at it on the news.
Yeah.
But it always annoys me that it's called Team GB.
I knew you were going to say that. Why?
It includes Northern Ireland, right?
Oh, in that respect, yes, that's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. So it should be called Team GB and Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's wrong.
Anyway, so yes, if you want to use your Fuji with your Canon or your Nikon, or your Olympus or your Leica or whatever, we're back to golf. Keith Martin. Hello, gents. Thank you for all the work you've done keeping us informed and entertained during these crazy times. Having visited the website and watched the films, I wanted to know if there are any non-documentary films or filmmakers you admire, and have they? So it's non-documentary films or filmmakers that you admire, and have they influenced the way that you make images? So I guess it's talking about fiction and stuff like that. Do you think?
Yeah, I guess so.
Non-documentary. See, I'm really driven by watching documentary stuff. So, but if you're talking about filmmakers like I don't know, are we talking about the Spielberg-y kind of filmmakers?
I think so. Stanley Kubrick is one of my favourites.
Yeah.
I think he's on about that, like Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino, maybe that kind of stuff.
Has that changed the way that you photograph, though? The way you make images?
Yeah, well, especially Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, I just run around with really long knives and swearing at people.
Yeah, at a wedding, that goes down really well.
What was that film?
Is this going to be one of those moments?
Oh, it's going to be worse than that. It was about a hotel. It was on top of a mountain lodge, and then
you mean The Shining?
No, it was a recent one, about 5 years ago.
Right.
And he cut his finger off, and they go up in a funicular railway, and there was only two people up there. That fella was in it, the Scottish actor.
Does anybody know, really? They all know, but we don't.
I'm typing. Hang on, I'm going to type into Google.
Well, what are you going to write? The Scottish fellow whose finger fell off.
A hotel on a mountain, chopped finger.
I bet it says The Shining.
I got it. Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, we knew that.
No, that is a fantastic film.
Yes.
And have you seen it?
I have.
That's a Wes Anderson film. So his stuff I love. If you ever watch, not so much because he did all those horror films as well at the beginning of his career, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like I Saw What You Did Last Night and things like that. His more recent stuff, the cinematography is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is almost all, especially the Grand Budapest Hotel, it's nearly all symmetrical. If you watch every single scene, it's symmetrical, that definitely I think about sometimes.
I've not recognised that as. Yeah. Okay.
It is. It's great. It's really, really cool. I'm trying to see now.
But how is so? That's inspired you for working in a symmetrical fashion. You mean?
So he filmed it on 35mm film.
Yeah.
So using a single studio camera.
Wow.
Right? So yeah, if you just type that into Google or whatever and look at some of the stills, it's just symmetrical. It's phenomenal. A really, really good film. Apart from when he cuts his finger off, I didn't like that bit.
I wonder, it can't all be Disney-fied or Miss Marple, but I wonder why he filmed it in that fashion. What inspired him to take that?
Well, I don't know about that, but that's his more recent stuff is a little bit like that. He puts a lot of thought into the cinematography. Definitely, and I think it's good.
It's interesting to watch directors that do use just one lens or something, isn't it? And they sort of the entire film is shot in one way. A lot of people sort of stick to a favourite focal length.
I think they do now. Yeah. He's done. I'm trying to think of like some more recent ones he's done, but I can't off the top of my head think of too many. But he also does. He did a lot of the kiddie stuff. Didn't he? Did the Fantastic Mr. Fox, I think. But the Grand Budapest Hotel is the one that sticks in my mind the most in terms of kind of cinematography.
Well, thank you, Keith, for that. Kev, we got time for one from the Facebook group, I'm sure.
Who's Keith?
Well, that was the person that had the question.
Oh.
You thought I was calling you Keith?
You totally got my name wrong.
No, that was Keith Martin that asked the question. That was my way of being polite at the end and saying, thank you, Keith, moving on. Although it is funny that I do call our father-in-law is called Trev. I call him Kev all the time. I always, all right, Kev, I'm Trev.
My God.
You've known me nearly 2 decades. I'm Trevor. Oh, sorry, Kev. It's a bit like Trigger.
All right.
Dave.
Okay. All right. Let's carry on now.
Yep. Go on.
Okay. So this is Michael's score, which is the tenuous link to the other one, isn't it? Because it's movie scores. Get it?
Oh.
And this is it's not so much a question. This is a monologue of thanks.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Right,
so let's do it. Firstly, thank you everyone that is involved in the creation and management of the podcast.
Oh, raise a glass. There we go.
To all 2 of us, to all the contributors, thank you for your time and knowledge.
Oh, a glass for you as well.
A lot of them.
Yeah. It's a bit like wedding speeches where gradually you sort of fall under the table because I've had so many of these.
I've learned a stupendous amount over the last few months, not only about Fujifilm, but all things photography related.
Yeah.
I have repeatedly heard the mention of beer and wine throughout the show.
Why?
I don't recall hearing what kind tickles your fancy. I'm an Irish lad who's lived in Barcelona and London and now currently residing in minus 50 or 40 degrees, depending on the season, Winnipeg in Canada. And he desperately misses a good old pint of Guinness. So the little question is, what is our favourite tipple? And I do like Guinness. I love
like
Guinness. Actually.
I had some Guinness the other day. Very good.
Yeah, a good Guinness is a good Guinness. So next time you're out, he says, get yourself a good Guinness and buy one for your guest as well. Raise your glass and say Slint. How do you say that? I always say that wrong.
Oh, yeah, I always get that wrong.
Slint. Cheers. Anyway, Irish for cheers. Slint.
Yeah.
It's not that, is it?
No, it's not. It's something
like
else. But I know. Yes, I know what you mean.
Thank you both for your time and effort. There's been many a laugh and had along the way in my truck at your expense. P.S. Kevin, you cannot say Bob's your uncle without finishing the rest of the quote.
Bob's your uncle and
yeah, isn't it something? Bob's your uncle and Fanny's his cousin or something.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, Kev.
Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt.
That's it. Fanny's your aunt.
That's it. Yeah. I do like a good Guinness, I have to say, but I am more this time of the year. It's the end of July and it's pouring with rain and it's quite cold and windy, so I'm more of a cider drinker at the moment.
Are you? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like a good Weston's 8.5% bottle. You can get them from the co-op quite cheap.
When you're offered a drink when you're working, Kev, I've had this of later. I didn't used to get it. I think maybe post-COVID. Well, it's not post-COVID. What am I talking about? Post coming out so we can work. People seem to be offering me more drinks at weddings. Maybe they're looking at me thinking he needs a drink. But I always turn it down. But have one. Go on. Come and join us. What's your? Do you ever?
No, I never drink at a wedding ever, and I do often get offered. Yes. The one I did a wedding a couple of weeks ago, and it was in a vineyard.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
It was a beautiful place, right? Beautiful place, and the fella that owned the vineyard was also running the day. On the vineyard, they also have a farm, and so they have beef. So the meal was beef, and so I was sat in the field while they were having their dinner. I was sat in the field, and over he comes with a plate of beautiful beef, and it did look beautiful, and like roast potatoes and everything. And he said, I really hope you like this. It's from our farm, and of course I don't eat meat.
No.
So I kind of pushed it around the plate a bit, chopped it up quite a lot, and made it look like I'd eaten some of it. Gave it back to him, and he kind of eyed it up, and then he said, and you'll have a glass of wine. They've opened some really special wine for this wedding.
I bet you had that.
You'll have a glass.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I won't. I'm driving in about 5 hours, so I'm not going to have a glass of wine.
No.
And I could just see his face. It was like, is there something wrong with you?
Yeah.
I mean, he was being lovely, absolutely, and it's rare for the venue people to offer you such a lovely meal and wine and everything. But yes, no, so I don't.
Go on, Kev, have some topside. Go on, Kev, go on.
Yeah, bless him.
How is the horse, by the way? While I think of it,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been up there for a while actually, but Gemma and the kids and stuff basically live up there.
Well, you can tell it's summertime. That's been an interesting first half of the show.
Hasn't it just? Yeah.
What you don't see is the edit job that goes into this thing. You really don't. Right. I think we should hear from our guest this week, who is Adrian Arbib, a photojournalist. Adrian's contributed to all the UK newspapers and many international ones to boot. He's travelled extensively covering human rights stories, and they include Rwanda, the Horn of Africa, and India. But today we're going to talk just a little about what it means to shoot as a photojournalist, to research the work, to find the work, and to present the work. Adrian, you've travelled the world to tell stories of plight and protest, which in terms of working as a photojournalist sounds all very daring and exciting, but I wouldn't imagine it started like that, though.
No, I mean, I went to college, London College of Printing, and I started a BA in photojournalism there, and I think I was a bit young for it, really. It was a very Marxist-led course, and I was, the age of 19 and 20, I wasn't really worldly enough really to absorb what was going on, but it really, I look back on it now and I think that was fantastic. It set me on the right track. I got disillusioned really because it was at the time of the Greater London GLA. It was being cut to shreds by the Thatcher government, and it was just the course fell apart. So I left and I went to work in an advertising studio. It was at the other end of the spectrum really, and there I learned so much. I learned sort of everything. I learned how to 10/8 and unloading films, and I just learned a lot about the technical ability. The political wasn't really was there, but I wasn't really exploring it.
Well, I was going to say, did it feel comfortable? Because, of course, as you say, the two worlds are extraordinarily different, aren't they?
Yeah, it was poles apart. But I just felt that I was getting really good at photography, or learning how to use medium format and large format, and it really was a different era. But then, following that, I just went off travelling. I did lots of different jobs. I've done lots of different jobs. And then, when I was in America, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, the writer George Monbiot, who works at The Guardian. He writes for The Guardian, and he said, do you want to go to Indonesia? I got this deal to do a book about human rights abuse in Indonesia, and I jumped at the chance, and that was my break, I guess.
So at that point, you probably thought, wait a minute, actually, this is my genre. This is something I can really get my teeth into. Yeah, the thing is that I think at the young age of 20, I was. When you're sort of trying to cut your teeth in photography, it's really difficult. I mean, you'll follow the pack around, you'll go around with all the press guys, but I think getting your teeth into a story and really well researching it
and then following it through. That's such an opportunity. Very few people get that opportunity. I was very lucky. But I mean, that taught me to follow a story through. Photojournalists very rarely get a chance to do that these days, unless you've got some backer. We were lucky. Both of us had backing of the. We got a small advance on the book. We travelled very light, and we just shot the story, and we brought back a kind of a new story. We got lots of stuff into the Dutch press, the German press, because it was a Dutch colony. Indonesia's a Dutch colony. We got quite a lot of stuff in the UK press, in the Guardian, and that's when I built a relationship up with the newspaper. So I presented stuff to the Guardian on other stories, and so it went on. Once you've done a couple of stories and you've got them in there, they take you seriously, and you can present new stories.
And the Guardian was first then. La Repubblica, which is the Italian newspaper, which is a left-wing newspaper, isn't it, I think? It's not so much now. I think it's more middle ground now, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, slightly. Yeah, middle ground, sort of. I mean, the magazine's good. The Weekend magazine. I mean, it's funny how newspapers work. Sections of the newspaper were sort of more left and right, and it's the same it's been the same, I think, in all newspapers.
But you were there for 6 years. Now, I wonder why you went from the Guardian to there.
Well, it's like everything in life. It's about who you know. I mean, a lot of the time. I mean, what happened is I used to I went down to Perpignan, the photography show in Perpignan, and there's Arles and all this kind of thing, and you take your portfolio around with you, and by which time I'd done a lot of work. I'd worked for Christian Aid, I'd worked for Oxfam, I was covering stories all over the place, and I had a reasonable portfolio of images, and then went to Rome following that to see the picture editor at La Repubblica and Colours of Benetton, and the momentum picks up, and the guy said, well, actually, you're really lucky because we need a guy in the UK, so would you be up for it? And I went, absolutely. And my Italian was terrible. I'd actually married an Italian girl, and I spent some time in Italy as well. Very different crowd from here. What is the press like actually in Italy? I know it's quite heady here, isn't it? There's a particular culture that British newspapers have. What about the Italian ones? They like their lunches, so they'll take you out for lunch, and they'll get to know you, and you'll hang around in the office afterwards, and you'll talk to the picture editors, and it's not so hierarchical as it is here. So during this time, you were becoming, I suppose, a bit of a go-to for these kinds of stories, protest and plight. And there was a group of us, actually. There was a group of photographers. I mean, I can think of a holiday. There was Andrew Tester, who works for the New York Times now. There was Antonio Olmos, who works for the Observer. There's Nigel Dickinson, who's in Paris. A whole bunch of guys, and we always to go around different protests. And there's Guy Smallman as well, who came through later on. And Gary Trotter, who had an agency called Images Sans Frontières. And there was just a group of guys that would cover, and women that would cover these events. In fact, so I should put a big shout out for the women. In fact, one of the best protest photographers I know is Jess Hurd. She's fantastic. But what we would do, we'd go around from one protest to another, just covering it, and we'd watch each other's backs. It was quite competitive to get your picture in as well. Right at the start of this, which was the days before digital, so there was a lot of processing going on and snipping of negatives and that kind of thing. I was basically looking for trouble spots in the UK and also worldwide, and sort of following my nose. And it was difficult. I mean, it was. I look back on it now. It's from a business model, it's a crazy thing to do. But you sometimes strike lucky. Let's talk about some of the stories. You mentioned the international ones, so we'll go into those. These are going to be out of sequence because we're starting in Nigeria in 1999, and I know you were doing jobs before then, of course. So you were in Nigeria, 99. Shell, remember this story, Shell completely deny the oil spills that are polluting hunting and fishing grounds. They say it wasn't on their watch or wasn't their fault, despite a lot of evidence to the contrary. And your work in this field, are you there as a storyteller or an evidence collector, or is it a bit of both? You're there as an observer and gathering evidence. And you almost become part of the story. I mean, I was actually working with John Vidal of The Guardian, the environment editor at the time. And John and I travelled there for 3 weeks. And we went there with Anita Roddick of The Body Shop and Gordon Roddick.
Right, yeah, I remember.
And because The Guardian didn't really have very much, well, they pleaded poverty, as they still do. And they don't really fund the journalists to go and travel out there. So what they do is they'll try and get somebody who's campaigning on the issue to sort of help it, to raise profile. And Anita and Gordon helped us, give us some money to travel there. So John and I went out to Nigeria, and we were with Anita for a bit, and she was given sort of stateship and made a king of a particular area. Right. And then with the Ogoni, because she hugely supported the Ogoni fight after Ken Saro-Wiwa had been killed. And we travelled out to the Delta area, and John and I split off, and we went off into the forest and this flooded forest. And I remember a couple of moments where we were actually in water up to our necks, and at the time I had a little Billingham camera bag, and I actually put it on my head and swam with my cameras on my head in this bag with John. I remember standing on a log with John while he was smoking a cigarette, and we were drying off and thinking, how far are we going to have to go? And the guide we were with, he took us, the Ejor guide, whose village had been basically filled with oil from this spill, took us to this village, and we took pictures and we got the story out, and it's just perseverance, really.
You're up against these huge multinationals. Shell is but one of the ones we're going to talk about. They have, of course, not just the manpower, but shall we say resources in which to perhaps dissuade you from telling a story. How do you deal with this facet of your work? Because it doesn't come risk-free, your work. You're sooner or later going to upset somebody who has a vastly different agenda to what yours is, Adrian.
Absolutely. No, that Shell... I remember coming back from the Ogoni story, and I got approached by Shell. They rang me up, and they were very, very pleasant. They were very friendly, and they said, "Would you like to come into our offices?" And I thought, good Lord, So I went. I thought, well, going to check this out. So I went to their offices, and they basically said, would you like to come and work for us? And I said, no, not at all. I actually went to see the Ogoni guys, and I said, I said to them, would it be all right if we, if I went out there, would it be helpful to you, to the campaigners? And they said, yeah, go, you must go. And actually, when it came down to it, Shell got cold feet on the whole thing. But it's so weird that as a photographer, you have to wear these different hats. Basically, you have your morality, which you have to stick by. But you every now and then these guys will come to see what your price is. That I don't do it for the money. I do it for the I do it for the story. I do it for the issue. But a lot of photographers are not in that position. So and the other thing is they will come at you much more heavily. When I did a story about in the UK, I came up against the might of RWE Power. Which really took the wind out of me, actually.
Well, there's actually a video of you. It's on Channel 4 News. I know you appeared, there was the story continued in Panorama, I think, as well, didn't it? But the bit that I particularly remember looking at was when somebody from NPower, one of the legal chaps, approached you and tried to slap an injunction on you. An injunction, actually, which you fought off, didn't you? Yeah,
thanks to the NUJ, who were amazingly supportive. It was a local issue in Oxford, and after I'd been sort of travelling all over the world, I ended up just covering local issues. You get kind of worn out from the travel, to be honest. It was just a simple issue of some lovely lakes just outside of near Abingdon, just outside of Oxford, where I live. And these beautiful lakes were a wildlife hotspot. They had otters, they had everything there, and they had all sorts of stuff. I went down, I used to walk my dog there regularly, and then we heard they were going to be filled in using the waste fuel ash from the power station at Didcot coal-fired power station, destroying this place. So a lot of people got up in arms about it, and I thought I'll go and cover the story. And occasionally I do work for people like BBC Wildlife. I do little notes and little stories for them, and just saw pictures, little shot away pictures of whatever's going on locally. And what happens when I went down there'd been an injunction had been placed on this particular slot area of this lake where they were filling it in, and all the workers were down there. They were cutting down a tree where literally a week before I'd photographed some kingfishers. So they were effectively destroying a kingfisher's nest, which is a protected species. And I was there photographing it, and they slapped the injunction on anyone who went near it. So I was then, the injunction applied to me, and it was pretty nasty. They basically said, yeah, we are going to prosecute. And that was sort of potentially 10 years in jail, I think. And it was a scary moment. It really was a scary moment. I felt very on my own.
Did you think they would carry it through? Of all the experiences, we'll come to Rwanda in a minute, which was before that. Of all the things you've been through, the things you've seen, the things you've photographed, it came down to some quite heavy-handed behaviour, which you managed to fight off in the end from a British company that you probably thought you'd never really have to experience.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're actually a threat to these guys and their money, you know that you can feel the weight. It's actually like a weight on your chest, and you're weighing it up. And I've been in these situations before. I think I'm a bit hot-headed. I get very involved. I get very passionate about the story, which isn't healthy. But I get very, very passionate. And there's only so many stories you can be passionate about. You just literally burn out. But I get very wound up about things like my local canal boatyard they were going to build on, so I got stuck into that. And I used my camera or my photographs a bit like a kind of not really a weapon, but it's my great kind of hero is Eugene Smith. You know, he photographed the Minamata massacre and the killing, Minamata poisoning, and I look back on that, and I think his sort of spirit is. I mean, I'd like to think his spirit is somewhere in me. I mean, I'm not as good a photographer as that guy, not a touch on him, but is that kind of the spirit is important to have the fire in you to take the pictures, and it's tougher these days, I think, maybe than it was, because you don't have the newspapers behind you. You don't necessarily have the support of these guys anymore.
The large multinationals come under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, we've talked about a couple already. I mean, particularly. Well, in the many countries, going back to Africa, my own recent travels to the Gambia showed me how Chinese business could seemingly sweep in, vacuum some fish out of the sea, process it, send it on its way as animal feed, and leave a whole community wondering who actually benefited from the process. I remember being told the story, standing there looking at these beaches, looking at boats that should really be out there fishing. I remember sort of being enraged by it, and I wanted to make my own photo stories. Well, how do you choose yours? I think you've touched on it there, but or are they always commissions? Do they have to be commissions to be able to pay their way? No,
I mean, they used to be commissions, but they're not anymore. I mean, now I have to go and hunt them out myself and research them. Are there any budding photojournalist or any journalist? I mean, it's not really just a photojournalist. You're a journalist. You're a seeker of the truth. You've got to go out and hunt that story down, and then collate all that information. So your fishing story, you have to know at some point, where am I just not going to carry this on anymore because you're just going to burn yourself out. You have to look at like what's doable, what's winnable, and there are certain factors that will make a story winnable. Who's going to print it is the other thing. You have to have the right funders. Yes, you definitely have to be commissioned, but you can definitely, with social media, get stuff out there and you'll get pickup on it.
And our thanks to Adrian Arbib, an archive interview I recorded last year for Photography Daily, my other cast, of course. And on that note, this week on Wednesday, over on Photography Daily, I'll be talking to a documentary commercial photographer, Finn Beals, who's living the dream in the great outdoors, making the stories he wants to in the style he likes to shoot. Perfect. And on Friday, the Jewel in the Crown show, The Photo Walk, where I take a mailbag out and chat photography whilst making a photo walk. Simple as. You and I with our cameras, and me with a microphone. Plus, inspirational words in between the letters from previous and future guests. And there is some news about the podcast to come on the Photo Walk show that's rather important this coming Friday. Right, back to your questions. Actually, Kev, before we have a question, it's only a couple of weeks now to the wedding of the year, and more of those clinks.
Yeah.
You've written your speech, yeah? Have you written your speech?
No.
No?
No, haven't even thought about it until you mentioned that. Then I've mentally put that in my to-do box.
Oh, you need to do one. You need to do yourself a really nice speech for Gemma.
I don't know if I'm going to do a speech.
Of course you do, Kev.
I don't. There's no point. What's the point? We've been together for hundreds of years.
Kev, don't. You're taking the romance out of a nice romantic moment. How's the budget going?
Yeah, it's even though this is a very low key kind of thing. Yeah, it's there's a lot of those ching-chings going.
Yeah, I bet. Is it true that you're having a hog roast? And you can't even eat it. I mean, we talked about this just a moment ago. You refused having a plate of horse, and now here we are at your own wedding. You won't be able to eat the grub. Well, grub's about the only thing you can eat. You can eat a grub, an actual grub.
Maybe that's what I'll have. Michael, who's 3 doors away from us, the butcher's, he's doing us a hog roast.
Ah, lovely.
Yeah. We'll cook it up and then bring it across the road, stick it on whatever they do with it, cut it up and give it to the people, and then I'm going to go to the co-op and get a salad.
I'm not sure I can ever eat pig again. because I did a wedding. It was last weekend, and not the weekend just gone, the weekend before that. It was I really enjoyed it. It was at the couple held it at a community farm. Oh, fantastic! It was Salisbury way, and so they have lots of animals and things there, obviously, including some alpacas. Who always... Are they alpacas? What's the smaller version of an alpaca? Anyway, I'm going to call it that.
Llama.
No, llama's the bigger one. Alpacas are small. I'm sure they're alpacas. But they always... Alpacas and me, we just don't get along. But right next now, once I got past the alpaca sort of hissing at me thing, the next pen, there was a couple of big pigs. And the lady whose job it is to look after them went into the pen. She said, look at this. And she said, she had an apple or something. She said, now, if you're going to have this, Susie, I think was the name. She said, Susie, sit. And this pig, I'm telling you, it was like a collie dog. And
Pigs are lovely.
Oh, it was. And she sort of, and then she scratched Susie behind the ear, and Susie just went, just fell over and went to sleep.
Oh no! I think I'd rather have a pig in the house than a dog.
Not sure you'd want the mess.
No, well,
mind you,
anyway. But no, they're cute. I love pigs.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't a vegetarian, I'd think I'd find it quite difficult eating a pig.
But enjoy your hog roast at your wedding.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to eat it, but I'm paying for it to be chopped up.
Yeah, and going around on a rotisserie. Yeah.
Poor bloody thing.
Anyway,
yes.
Right, questions. Have you got one?
Right, I've got a question from Leslie Burdett.
Yes.
She says, do you have and do you use any old lenses on your cameras? If so, and which and how did you come by them?
Yeah. Well, I do. I've got one on the Fujifilm X Pro 1, which is the 28mm Yashica lens, which is brilliant. I love it. And I came by it through a friend of the show, Tim Binder. Yes, thank you, Tim.
I haven't got. I've got old legs on my body, that's for sure. I went to judo on Wednesday for the first time.
Do you feel a bit vintage?
Oh my God! Yeah, I couldn't walk for days. So
have you got any? You've got vintage lenses, haven't you? Surely you have. I know you have.
I have, but they're for my GFX, and I never use them. I've got a Minolta 85 1.4, I think it is.
Right.
I have used it. That's not true to say I never use it. I have used it, but no, I don't. I just usually go for the prime brand ones.
Yeah.
But lots of people do, and you can get some really cool, especially like those old Russian lenses. You can get them on internet really quite cheap and do some funky stuff with them.
I probably wouldn't use it for a professional job. Not sure I would.
What is it you've got? Yashica? What
Yashica 28mm that's on the Fujifilm X Pro 1. I've never taken it since I got that lens. I haven't taken it off that camera. Not changed it at all.
So that's giving you what, a 16.5 mil thereabouts?
No, it's the other way around, Kev. You're still thinking GFX.
Oh yes, sorry. So it's giving you.
It's 40-something millimeter, isn't it?
39, 40.
Yeah. And that's a really funny enough. I was talking about this with a friend earlier about useful focal lengths, and just if for one moment we talk in the vernacular of traditional full frame. Somebody was suggesting that 40mm is a really good focal length for documentary work, because it sits between that 35, which is sometimes it's a tad too wide, and 50, which is always a little bit too close for me when I'm doing documentary work. It's quite a useful lens, focal length actually, the 28mm on a Fujifilm camera. It really is.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Okay. Oh, Kev, I'm just trying to create a conversation. Paul Ballaresque. Actually, Paul was suggesting that people who keep boxes look at the grid on Instagram profiles, and whether I know what you're saying here, Paul. What are our feelings about grids? We kind of have covered this before, where people look at grids as well as the images on Instagram. You don't, do you?
No,
not
much. I mean, I do occasionally, but only by accident.
Yeah, my mind has changed on it. I was all for the pretty grid until I talked to Johnny Keeley over on Photography Daily about grids, and he was talking about the idea of people beginning to sort of know your personality a bit more, And so I've come away from, trying to make a pretty grid to actually creating a story around what I do each day, looking, a photo walk picture, or looking at the studio desk, or I think that's so, I did say the other day, if Kev's hearing this, he'd raise one eyebrow at me and definitely say, I told you so.
Yeah, and throw out the boxes.
Yeah, I haven't quite got to that yet. But, so pretty grids. Right, over to you, Kev, your question.
Okay, Kirk Vogel says, I'm not really the biggest user of Fujifilm film simulations, as I like to edit each of my images for a look that I was inspired toward as I shot it. But what are your current favourite film simulations? And, in capitals, if you had the power and could persuade Fujifilm to release a special simulation you have secretly been harbouring in your loins. Where do you keep your film simulation ideas? Do you keep them in your loins?
Not in my loins.
I'm going to start keeping them in my loins.
No, but I do have dividers. I do have dividers for them, though, Kev.
What would it look like? Could your Joey converter handle it? Great show, yada yada yada. Kurt Vogel from New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, I tend to use standard Provia all the time, really. For a while, I went through using Chrome a lot, but I wasn't quite sure of what it did to. Funnily enough, it was people's lip colours that put me off using the Chrome. So Provia is my answer then. Yeah,
well, I like to use, for black and whites, I like to use the Acros plus R, and that gives me a nice filmic look. I do like that.
Yeah. Always plus R, not always
usually that. Plus R, because that gives a bit more contrast.
Yeah.
That's for my black and white JPEGs. And then for colour, now that we have it, I typically use classic neg, which is, again, really nice, beautiful kind of contrast. You've got to be a little bit careful with it, with the greens. It can get a bit strong in those areas, but they're the ones that I would use.
When you're filming, does that change? Because I use a Turner when this is where I do change, and the profile I love is a Turner for filming.
Yeah, I'll use a Turner
always.
Yeah. Not that I've done much filming recently, although I did film the concert.
Yeah, that concert. Yeah.
I don't know why I filmed that on though. But anyway, the idea now. Hang on, I'm just. Hold on a sec. Hold on.
What are you doing?
Just getting something out of my loins.
Kev. That's horrible.
That's where I'm keeping all my JPEG recipes these days.
I'm sure you are.
What would I have? I would love. Now, when I did my presets, I built some kind of bespoke ones based on kind of photographers that I love.
Yeah.
And one of the ones I did where I called it Jane Bown. I called it Bown.
Oh, yes.
Jane
yeah.
Bown.
Yeah.
So I would really love a real, really contrasty JPEG where black and white, where it's really only going to be good if you've got very differentiating light. So that you've got a strong fall off between shadows and highlights.
So do you mean though that you could actually get lost in the sort of the black end of that photograph?
Yeah, that's what I would really like. With grain built into it. Very real filmic. Like Fujifilm have built some beautiful film simulations, and the Acros film simulation does have some grain built into the simulation. But I'd like to see them just go brave and create a real dramatic black and white film sim that always looks like it's shot at 3200, even if you're shooting it clean. That's what I'd like.
But then you start to move out of sort of traditional and named film stocks that people know to sort of invented new film stocks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which
I suppose isn't really the idea of the film simulation, is it really, within the camera?
No, true. But you could be looking at, I don't know, something like FP4, that kind of.
Oh, okay.
High contrast FP4, but then I don't know what the legalities are.
I was going to say, I wonder how comfortable they'd feel doing that.
Well, there'd be copyright things going on and stuff like that. They just wouldn't do that kind of. It's the reason why they don't have a Kodachrome one is because Kodachrome is not there. They don't own it. So,
well, if they ever did do that, I'd like a Delta 3200, please.
Yeah, Delta 3200 as well. Yeah, that'd be nice.
What was your the one that you made that was newspaper? which I love. You know I like that one because I tell you often. What was that based on?
Hang on, let me just load it up. I'll see if I've based it on one of the profiles.
Because that one for me, that feels the most filmic of all the ones that you created. It's almost like a one touch and add a bit of contrast in, and you are there.
Yeah, so that one, that's a custom profile. That was not based on any of the kind of film stocks, but I did in that edition. I did do HP5, Delta, and then the FP4 stuff came in the new set, and Tri-X as well. T-Max. These are all the options. Yeah. I'd like to see all of those, but yeah, it's not going to happen because Fujifilm don't own the rights to those kind of things.
No, and that's why you have to sort of loosely call them other things. Well, not loosely, definitely call them other things when you're making your profiles. Yeah. Well, the newspaper one to this day is, for me, that's the one click and a little bit of contrast tweak, and you are away. There we go. Just done an advert, Kev.
Well done. Thank you. Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. Right, book time.
Hang on a sec.
This huge book that you've got.
I'm going to have to go all the way over. Oh. It is massive.
Yes.
Elliott Erwitt's A Kolor with a K. Kolor. And it's one of those, it's produced by T-News, which is the publishing house, and they always produce these massive, beautiful tabletop books that you'd leave on your sideboard kind of thing. Right, so I'll read out the blurb because it always makes sense. To select the colour photographs from this vast project that have never been published in a book before, Elliott Erwitt sifted through his ample archive of nearly 500,000 35mm slides. 500,000, and we thought we overshot at weddings. Then he began the mammoth task of whittling it down to this epic collection of roughly 450 pages. For most of these images, the colour managed to stay miraculously preserved, and every evocative detail is as crisp as the date of its creation. Whether world leaders or sassy showgirls, say sassy showgirls.
Sassy showgirls. Yeah, it is. You wouldn't be able to do it for long.
The subjects reflect Erwitt's own wry and eclectic sensibility. To say the juxtapositions are intriguing would be an understatement. From marketplaces to military camps, Vegas to Venice, there is a rich mixture of public pageantry and carefully observed private interactions. Oh, I love that. Public pageantry.
Did you get yours in the yellow box that it can come in?
No, so mine is not the limited edition.
Right.
Mine is just the standard one. It's like 45 quid.
Yeah.
So it's not the cheapest book, but it's highly available. You can get it pretty much anywhere. Honest to God, this is one of the biggest books I have. It's kind of Genesis size.
Is it?
And it's just pictures, and it is just absolutely wonderful. All colour. Of course, Elliott Erwitt is, well, I say mostly known for his black and white, and probably if you type Elliott Erwitt into Google Images, you'll see mostly black and white stuff. But he did go through quite a big phase of shooting colour, and the most of which we've got here. It says that they're unpublished, so a lot of these pictures are ones that I have actually seen a handful of them before, but maybe on like Magnum Archives or something. But there's just a total random selection of images. For example, I've just turned. There's no page numbers, but somewhere in the middle, there's a guy in the sea doing kind of the He-Man stance. And then on the page opposite is a nude woman in a studio, like totally random. And then we've got a few pages on. We've got a collection of photojournalists, all taking pictures of somebody. So the story that Elliott Erwitt is making here is of the congregation of photographers rather than who they're taking a picture of.
I wonder what the collective noun for a group of photographers is.
A broke.
Yes, probably, yeah.
And some of them are pictures that you just would not expect from Elliott Erwitt. Some of them are, kind of editorial. Some of them are commercial. Some of them are staged. Not so much documentary stuff. There is some brilliant, witty images. Obviously Elliott Erwitt is very famous for his series about dogs. And on some of the pages where the images are smaller, you can see the page number. So page 370 is this brilliant picture of a lady's pair of legs crossed over a man's pair of legs, and then this dog that's sat vertically upright in the middle. Oh, yeah. It almost looks like they pulled the chain on the dog, and so he's kind of holding up.
It does look like that, yeah.
Brilliant.
He has a sort of this ability to be in the right place at the right time, because I'm sure you're familiar with the image of the guy that's showing himself.
Yes, that's the one I was just looking at.
Yeah. Now, that looks a fairly modern image in some respects, only because there's a detail within that photograph of the man that's showing himself with his long mac on, and on his right leg has a fairly modern looking sort of form of tat, doesn't it? Tattoo.
Yeah, I've lost it now. I've lost the picture. But
I mean, how did he know that man was going to do that at that moment? Did he think, "Oh, I'm going to follow this bloke for a minute because he looks like a flasher to me"? But the woman that's looking at him has got that real disdainful look in her kind of, "Well, I don't know why you bothered." But it's interesting, isn't it, that he manages to find. He seems to be in the right place at the right time. These dog photos are one example of that, aren't they?
Well, they are, but also, I mean, if you think, how many millions did we say?
500,000.
Half a million.
35
mil slide. So basically, he's out there constantly, isn't he?
You've got to be doing a lot of walking.
He's doing it. He's doing the job.
Yeah.
But the dog stuff, if you hear him talk about that, it's not just a case of he wanders around and, he gets lucky. What he does is he finds certain places where people walk their dogs regularly. He waits for the right time of the year where the light is right for the direction and the people walking their dogs, all of that kind of stuff. So many of these pictures, yes, I mean, he may well be a case of being in the right place at the right time, but also there's a lot of observational work that goes on beforehand. Which is the best thing, the best way to do it, isn't it? You're kind of staking it out effectively and still getting your brilliant candid pictures. There's wedding portraits, studio portraits.
Weddings?
Yeah, wedding. He did do a few weddings. There's some famous
Elliott
pictures.
Erwitt shot weddings.
Black and white wedding pictures. There's some of the more kind of the latter ones are his time in Japan. And Korea. There's a wonderful picture of a set of guys and a woman sat in a bathtub waving a Korean flag, and the woman's got this big smile on her face, and so have the guys. And there's some. I tell you, there's some images also that if you just randomly showed them to me, I would say, yeah, I think that could be an Elliott Erwitt. But then there's also a whole load that I would think, nah. No chance.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, and then at the end you've got all the contact sheets. So let me tell you, if I can find, some lovely stuff from Brighton Beach. I'm looking for the contact sheet for that one you were just talking about, the flasher, and it's actually a fashion shoot.
Right, okay. I'm a bit disappointed about that.
I did think when we were looking at it, and we were talking about being in the right place at the right time, I did think that is remarkable.
Yes.
So yes, that is one of the fashion shots.
Actually, I say I'm disappointed, but I'm pleased it's not a real one. But what's that advertising?
Who knows?
Strange advertising campaign.
Yeah. But no, the contact sheets at the back are just very simple. Just tells you date of the picture, and where they are and what it was about.
I always think it's fascinating, isn't it? The contact sheets when whole books of contact sheets are available. The Magnum one is one of the most impressive, of course. When you see that, you sort of get an idea of how the photographer's mind is really working.
Yeah. No, it's great. Really cool book, really big book. There's Fidel Castro there, page 54. Took that picture in Cuba, funny enough. Yeah.
And now, this is how much did you say it was, book-wise?
£45.
Oh, not too bad then. For such a large book.
It is enormous. Look, I'm going to tell you now, tell me on the bookstore on Amazon, the weight of it. 448 pages.
Right.
It's 28.5 by 37 centimeters.
Right.
And this is the 2013 first edition. It doesn't say weight. Right. But let me tell you, it's heavy.
Good one.
Good one indeed. Elliott Erwitt's Kolor. Love it.
Right, question. I think we've got time for maybe just a couple more. You're right, Kev. This one is from Theodore Tollefson, a fine art photographer. He says, I know you want offbeat questions, but it's at least a little offbeat to ask a wedding photographer landscape photography questions, right? So I'm not sure where we're going to go with this, Kev. He found there was an infographic on Petapexel, I don't know whether you saw this question come in, that purports to show how the transition part of a graduated neutral density filter will be wider on a crop frame sensor than on a full frame sensor. I did look at it. But will it in practice, he says, won't crop factor correct the graduated area back toward what it should be or would be on full frame with an equivalent focal length? If 18mm is similar to 24mm for subjects, is there any reason it won't have the same effect on the graduated part of a graduated filter? Did you get that, Kev?
Yes, I get the question. I have no idea about the answer.
This is while I wait for the dollar to be strong enough to pick up a nice Lee 85 kit for, say, $10. What should I do?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I have filters. I have Lee filters, in fact. And they did a dedicated one for the X100.
Yeah.
It's called the Big Stopper. I love that. Big Stopper.
Big Stopper.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, actually. I'm sure people like Carl would know the answer to that.
Yeah,
He's got a brain the size of a planet.
Pass that one over to you, Carl, to answer that one. I'm interested about this filter you had for the X100.
Yeah, Big Stopper.
Did you work with it a lot?
I did in the early days, yeah. I mean, of course, the X100 has always had a built-in ND filter. And then this Big Stopper was the reason why I had it was because when I wrote my book on the X100S,
yes.
I had to write a section about filters, and so Lee supplied me with this thing called the Big Stopper,
right.
And it was great. So it was a 10-stop ND filter for the X100. So technically you could do 13 stops because there was 3 stops built in as well. And bearing in mind that was now, sorry, I should say it wasn't then, but now you've got the electronic shutter as well, so you can go up to 1/32,000th of a second and stick 13 stops on it.
Good heavens!
You could basically shoot a portrait on the sun.
Yeah.
Might get your feet burned.
Yeah,
but
it might ruin your shoes.
Yeah.
Did the original X100 didn't have a neutral density filter built in? Did it? No.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, 3 stops. Now it's up 5 stops, but yeah, 3 stops.
I didn't realise that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there we go. Last question, I think, Kev, from the Facebook group.
Right. Strap yourself in.
All right.
This is a big one.
Okay.
This is from Darren Goldstein, or Goldstein, perhaps. Okay, time to talk monitors and color accuracy.
Oh, no.
Here we go. Right, ready? I'm a full-time working professional photographer, was using an iMac, but have recently upgraded to the new M1 MacBook Air.
Right.
I was hoping to use the old iMac as a second display, but that won't work with the new M1 Max. I've tried the Lunar display adapter, which is okay, but too much latency. Can you recommend a somewhat affordable display, approximately 27 inches, that is suitable for photographers? I know there are monitors in the 2,000 Canadian dollar range, but I'm thinking in the $400 to $800 range that are still considered monitors geared towards photographers. Right. I know as a pro I shouldn't be balking at $2,000 monitors, but knowing that the iMac is coming down the road, I am trying to save some dollars. Since I'm editing off both the MacBook and also my iPad Pro, which he loves, there is no color calibration for the iPad that he knows of. So up until now, I've been trusting that the Apple's displays are up to par with relatively accurate color and brightness, etc. I know it's not perfect, but it's good enough for most projects. With so many devices and displays out there, is there even a point to making sure my displays are calibrated correctly? My attitude lately has been as long as my color brightness is consistent within my own workflow, that's the best I can do. I don't make prints. The clients of mine that do will likely use a professional lab printing house and will most likely have someone adjust where necessary. So when does the display calibration matter? Thanks, lads.
Well, the calibration in I'm surprised that you trust an iMac so much, because I've always thought, now I'm a Mac man, you know that, Kev, but yeah. I've always thought the colours that come out of iMacs are blooming awful, and the Thunderbolt displays were even worse for me. And that's why I tend to edit, and I get the contrast right. So the depth of the image I get right and the exposure I get right. But then for the final colour, really, just to check everything, I'm afraid I slide it onto a BenQ, because that's the only thing I can trust. I don't trust the iMacs for colour at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I don't have a Mac system, so I can't really comment on that.
But I hear this from all my colleagues that do use iMacs. Fantastic, lovely, can do pretty much everything you want it to do, but fine colour tuning, sliding onto something that really is bespoke for the photographic industry.
Yeah, I mean, I got BenQs as well. I got the 32 and the 27, the 4K ones. I have no idea what Canadian dollars. What's 2,000 Canadian dollars in our world? Hang on, 2,000 CAD in sterling is
2 shillings, 4.5.
1,000. So it's roughly half. So
Right.
£1,100. So he's looking for something in the £200 to £400 range. Really,
I don't
Not
really
gonna get
know
a lot
that.
for that.
No, I don't think there's anything I can think of at all that's available for that.
I mean, there are monitors that you can get. I bought one when I had an issue with my monitor. I had to get a standing one, and I got a
What's the Dell one that you've got?
BenQ one. I got a cheap BenQ, but it was a wide one, and that was only about £400. But it's only HD. It's not a color accurate one. So the one I did end up getting is this Dell 40. The product name is U4021QW.
But that doesn't fit into his budget at all. That one.
I wouldn't have thought so. No, this is
No.
probably this is about £1,600, but it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
40 inches, 5K, beautiful.
The question that I suppose always remains is what happens when your clients look at a picture on their completely uncalibrated system that they sort of power up
that's
and down
what he was saying,
on the brightness.
Is there even any point?
Is there any point? There is a point, because I think as professionals we have to get it right. So we, at least at our end, we can say it's fine when it leaves here. I have no idea what you do at your end. That is important.
Yeah, I think it's important too. Although I do get the point in hand. In that most people will probably be looking at things on phones and iPads these days and what have you. But yeah, I think we have a kind of responsibility to try and get it right as much as possible.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you for your question. Now, we do need more questions now. More thoughts, more questions, things that you are doing with your photographic life. There's 2 ways to do it. You can either send it to click@fujicast.co.uk, or you can pop it in the Facebook group, or if you're a patron, send it through the patron channels, or channel. Or, of course, like James Saws, just send it with beer. There is that choice as well. But we need more. We need more. We do this every summer, don't we?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Kev, we should have August off the podcast as well. You have August off weddings. We should do it off the podcast as well. And it would be a massive mailbag when you got back in. But if you've liked this or any of the week's shows, thank you. If you can, of course, feel it's relevant, then you can leave a review for us. Or if you can share the episode on Twitter or on Facebook, you are a star. Thank you to our guest this week, who's Adrian Arbib. Send your questions to, as I said, click@fujicast.co.uk or in the Facebook group as well. Thank you to those supporting the show by Patreon. Music from Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredible artlist.io. Kev's going back to wedding planning. I'm not sure how much are you doing? How much is Gemma doing? To be fair, Kev, she's doing a lot.
Well, there's not a lot to be done, really. Just tell people to turn up. That's it, isn't it?
Kev, you sound like the typical bloke that gets up at a wedding and in his wedding speech he says, these weddings, they sort of plan themselves by themselves, don't they?
I'm going to be doing the country music. I'm going to be doing the line dancing, late night line dancing.
Is that the disco? Country music?
Yeah, too right.
Oh, do you know what? I'm away doing a wedding that day, but I almost feel like I want to sort of come via the party at the end just to see you doing a bit of a country set. Are you going to use
don't forget your Stetson.
Are you going to use your double decks?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to spin it all up.
Kev double decks.
Country boyo.
Country boyo. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.